Are we living in the end times? In the famous Pentecost sermon of Peter, which is reproduced in the Acts of Luke in 2:16-21, he speaks, "But this is what was spoken before by the prophet Joel. And it shall come to pass in the last days, saith God, that I will pour out of my Spirit upon all flesh, and your sons and your daughters shall prophesy, and your young men shall see visions, and your old men shall dream dreams. And upon my servants and upon my handmaids will I pour out of my Spirit in those days, and they shall prophesy. And I will do wonders in heaven above, and signs in the earth beneath, blood and fire and vapor of smoke. The sun shall be turned into darkness, and the moon into blood, before the great and manifest day of the Lord come. And it shall come to pass, that whosoever shall call upon the name of the Lord, shall be saved." This apocalyptic account was seen by the prophet Joel about 3,000 years ago, and quoted by Peter about 1,000 years later. In recent centuries, there have been over 500 prophecies predicting the end of the world. And yet, since the turn of the year 2000, there has been a justified assumption that a global change will take place in the coming decades, combined with a comprehensive expansion of consciousness. The first harbingers are already appearing on the horizon, and are causing people great distress, anxiety and hardship. Ash from volcanic eruptions darkens the sun, forcing state-of-the-art technology with its airplanes to stay on the ground. Violent tsunamis in Thailand and Japan, hurricanes over the US, and volcanoes in Indonesia, La Palma, Italy, and elsewhere create forces that man is powerless to counter. In recent years, the Earth has been shaking incessantly, and there is hardly a continent left where destruction has not occurred. Heat waves pass over the countries in Africa with more than 120 degrees, or in Europe up to 116 degrees Fahrenheit. Springs dry up in Africa, and water shortages are imminent in many of the southern countries. What does Jesus Christ say about this? In Logion 18, it is written in the Gospel of Thomas. The disciples said to Jesus, "Tell us in what way our end will be." Jesus said, "Have you already discovered the beginning, that you ask about the end? In the place where the beginning is, there will be the end. Blessed is he who will stand at the beginning. And he will know the end and will not taste death." Source: See zum Tagwald. In Luke 21:7-12, the disciples asked Jesus, "Master, when shall these things be? And what is the sign, when shall these things be?" And he said, "Take heed, be not deceived. For many will come in my name, saying that it is I, and that the time has come. Do not follow them. But when ye shall hear of wars and insurrections, be not dismayed, for these things must first come to pass, but the end is not yet at hand." Then he said to them, "One nation shall rise against another, and one kingdom against another. And there shall be great earthquakes in divers places, and great times, and pestilences, and there shall be terrors, and great signs from heaven. But before all these, they shall lay hands on you, and persecute you, and shall deliver you up into their synagogues and prisons, and shall bring you before kings and princes for my name's sake." Looking at the last sentences of Jesus, there is no question that massive waves of persecution of Christians are taking place, especially in some Eastern countries, where not only many Christians are enduring in prisons in China, or even being killed in other countries. Never before has the hatred towards Christians been so great here, as in the present time. At the moment we are experiencing the pestilence, where some advisors of politicians are spreading fears, which not only frighten many people, but because of this in some families still quarrels and disputes have moved in. Jesus Christ speaks about this in Matthew 10:34-36, "You should not think that I have come to send peace on earth. I have not come to send peace, but the sword. For I am come to stir up a man against his father, and the daughter against her mother, and the son against his brother-in-law. And man's enemies will be his own household." We live on earth in duality, where good and evil have equal influence on the spirit of man. We are here on earth to align our consciousness towards unconditional love. If we succeed in living according to the only commandment of Jesus, which reads something like this, "You shall love God your Father and your neighbor as yourself," then we have nothing to fear. If we are able to live without emotional, but only constructive evaluations and without expectations, which usually end in disappointment, then we can hope for the exaltation and the anointing, which will take place either here, or after our return home in the third heaven. For it is only through fear and suffering that man matures to knowledge, or through the humility with which he contemplates the wonders around him. Ultimately, Christ is born again in every human being, and thus women and men are crowned as sons of God. So also Apostle Paul said in Galatians 2:20, "I live not I, but Christ lives in me." If you have freed yourself from the adversary of fear, or the ego, and Christ lives in you after the anointing, then you have returned to the beginning, as Jesus expressed it in Logian 18, see above. So Jesus said in Revelation 3:5, "He that overcometh," in brackets the ego, "shall be clothed in white raiment, and I will not blot out his name out of the book of life, and I will confess his name before my Father and his angels." Source notes: Catholic Luther Bible 1849, Jansen Ludemann, Nag Hammadi, C. Zumtagwald, Translation of the Gospel of Thomas. Hildegard Schaefer, Dialogue with Claudius, Experiences of the Author. Subscribe to our channel, in which you enter in the search box of YouTube, Christ Mysteries 910, and confirm. A picture of Christ will appear. Click on it and you are in the channel. Then click on videos above and all the audio spots in German and English will open. Then click on subscribe. Translated with deepl.com/translator, free version.